Good afternoon and welcome to today's training. Today's training is Student Behavior in the Classroom Part 1 Makeup Session for our session that occurred on September 14th, 2018 at Brandywine Heights Middle School. We are happy that you are joining us. We are sorry you could not make the original session. I have put together a training that is as close to the original one as possible. There are clips in today's training from the training on the 14th. There are also other parts that I put together that are not from the training on the 14th, and that's only because some of the video footage wasn't there. So I will try to make this training as meaningful as possible, even though you weren't able to be there. And as you move along, there are often times where I have put in 5 or 10 minutes for you to do an activity here or there. Please do them and come back to the video when you're finished. If you ever need to pause to take more time, please do so. Or also if you need to speed it up, please do so as well. At this time, could you please make sure you are signed up for the training in PG? That way at the end of the training today, you are able to access the evaluation, which you will need to take in order to get credit for today. Today's training is a 3-hour session, and once you take the evaluation, you will then need to go back and mark complete. We will review that at the end of today's training. Please take a minute now to make sure you're signed up. I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about myself, a personal, a professional, and a quirk. My name is Nicole Toohey. I go by Coley at SOS, so feel free to call me Coley. There are 2 other Nicoles, and so we each have a nickname, and mine's Coley. My personal is that picture of my children there, Lucy and Charlie. Our big news is that Charlie started to walk for the first time this week, and Lucy just has entered her preschool 3-year-old class this week, and it's been fun watching them be excited and grow, and they are a bundle of joy. My professional is that picture of the Brooklyn Bridge there. I started my career in New York City in a pretty tough area on Avenue D, and I had a class that the principal told me pretty much, good luck, you'll hate it, you'll hate them, it's going to be a terrible year. And it was far from that. The students in my class exceeded my expectations. I set firm boundaries, clear expectations, and was kind, and they responded very well. I will never forget that class, and they taught me probably more than I taught them. My quirk is that picture of the socks. I have this funny, strange thing that I wear my socks half on my feet and half off my feet. Not when I have my shoes on, but when I'm just around the house. It's like I'm not hot enough to take them off, but not cold enough to have them on, so they are about halfway on my foot, and it drives everybody around me crazy, but that's my quirk. So if you could take a minute to share with anyone who is there with you, hopefully one or 2 other people are there, a personal, a professional, and a quirk. then those of you that are there today can get to know each other. I believe that's very important when we attend trainings, is that there's a personal level to our learning. So take a minute and share with each other.
All right. Connect with somebody that.
Go ahead.
Okay.
My name is.
My name is Sarah Johnson.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
I know. Well, she's still with others. So I connect years because my first teaching job was in an inner city program also, except I taught agriculture to inner city students. And my personal is that I have a whole pile of kids, 7. And my quirk is that I do not like anything pumpkin spice.
You go, girl.
Small season for you. You just struck out.
Hi, my name is Linda.
Hi, Linda.
I work at the elementary school. Personal thing you don't know, probably some of you do, my son is a meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Wow.
He was a Brady Wayne graduate too.
Yay.
Personal, I've been a para for 21 years. Before that I was a dental assistant.
Wow.
And I'm a neat freak, big time.
You too.
That's my quirk.
It's all good.
I know, but it's a little on the obsessive side.
Just go ahead, just connect.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I work at the high school. I've been here for like ever. At the high school. I am a twin. I have a twin sister, 7 minutes apart. Antoinette is my twin. I went to business school in Philadelphia. Took the train every day. That was a blast. And my quirk is I'm OCD, and I didn't realize until a couple years ago when I was organizing my desk and one of my students was watching me here. So, that's it.
Anybody link?
I do with the OCD. Yeah, because I was up at the high school also. I am now down in the middle school. By the way, my name is Luann.
Hi, Luann.
But I always had to have my things on my desk arranged just a certain way. And the custodians at nighttime would like to play games with me. And they'd move all my things all over the place on the desk. And then I'd have to come in every other morning and rearrange and put everything right back where it was. And my personal thing would be that I have 3 dogs. And right now they're just like really shedding, and I have hairballs all over the place.
Okay, I'll go. Hi, I'm Wendy.
Hi,
I'm not sure if this is a connection or not, but she said she likes her desk on top to be very neat. I'm really flexible with having my, the kids move things around on my desk on the outside. On the inside, it's a totally different story. Everything has to be just so. Let's see. I've worked as an office manager. I've worked in an office most of my life. And then I came here, started volunteering many years ago, like 21 or 22 years ago, and just kept working. So that's my professional. And my quirkiness, I guess, would be my crazy animals. I've had just about everything. I've had a 5.5-foot lizard who is, like a cat. He rubs up against your leg and wants to be picked up and held. So I have had lots of different kinds of animals.
Is that the thing you call the bearded dragon?
No, the bearded dragon's only this big.
Only.
My name is Serena Kohler, and I can relate with exotic animals. I grew up with parrots, and I even had a koati.
A what?
A koati.
A koati.
We wanted it as a pet. I've been a para for 12 years at the elementary school. My personal thing is I have 2 beautiful daughters. One's in college and one's in the military. And my quirk would be that I eat oranges with hot sauce and salt.
That's a good one.
Oranges and hot sauce.
I guess I can link to the hot sauce thing. My quirk is I'll try peanut butter on a lot of things that you might find gross, like I've had it on burgers before and different things. My professional is I just graduated from Kutztown University. My name is Rich, by the way, and my personal is my sister was actually induced for labor today, and so she's going to be in labor today or possibly tomorrow.
Oh, goodness. Well, if you have to leave to get a call or anything.
Well, we can't
Pause for just a minute. And Sandy, I'll let you introduce.
Okay, as I said earlier, Renee was going to stop by. She has a few things that she just wants to touch base with you guys on, so we're pausing this so she can chat with you guys.
Friday. How is everybody? Sorry I'm late. I have like a million things that we're trying to do. You may have already saw that Mrs. Taylor and I had put together a procedure guide to help you with some of your just what to do on a daily basis or what it looks like to be a paraprofessional. Have any of you seen this from any of your teachers so far? Okay. Mrs. Taylor's going to send it to you. I believe she's going to make it available through email.
Yep.
And then if you need to print it or however you want to do it, I'll pass some of them around that you can kind of take a look at. And really what it is just helping you understand, what is the role. And I know you're doing an awesome job. Your teachers talk highly about everything that you do every day. The thought was just to help you sort of see what is a paraprofessional, how important are you, what are your roles and responsibilities, who do you contact when you need support, and of course SOS is number one on that list. Some of the things that are in there discuss who is your immediate supervisor, and that would be your teacher that you work with. She would be your immediate supervisor. And I believe that you had that 30 minutes to go over what are their expectations for your responsibilities, and they sort of share that with you. If you're in the regular ed classroom and that teacher might have questions or need you to do a little bit more, she'll talk to your immediate supervisor, which would be the teacher that you're working with. If there are any issues after that, as they were talking, then they would contact Mrs. Taylor, and then you would have a conversation on that end. Until you actually start being able to go through that, it's going to be hard to really discuss everything that's in there. But there's a lot of communication pieces in there. When you should have your cell phone, when you should not have your cell phone, and your cell phone really, and I know that's obvious, should not be in the classroom with you. It shouldn't be out in the classroom when you're working with students. Now, if there's an emergency and you're waiting for a doctor's appointment or a doctor's phone call, then that would be cleared through Mrs. Taylor and your teacher that I need to leave this out because I'm waiting for the doctor to call me back. I know how that is because if you miss that phone call, then you don't get that appointment and you're waiting another couple months. So just like sort of basic things in there, communication. I believe the biggest part that Mrs. and Taylor and I worked with, and I received input. I had given this to the special education teachers as well to supply input, to add some things they wanted in there or some things taken out, is the communication component. When you're out and about, you are that tie with that student, but remember the confidentiality piece of it. It's really important that when you're working in the classroom that all those things stay in school. And I know when you're working individually with that student, you become really close with that parent, but all that communication should be between the teacher and the parent and not you. I mean, keep it cordial, say, I love working with that child and have that conversation, but when it comes to education or functional skills, really just state, based on some of the confidentiality in the classroom, you really need to talk to his or her teacher. And I know you're probably in the grocery store or in the mall or when you're at soccer that parents are grabbing you all the time. Believe me, I know how hard that can get sometimes, but really focus on the communication component that's in there because that confidentiality is such a huge piece. And that's what can get you, going down the road into some litigation. So really kind of, think about that. If you have to think like, I maybe should not have this conversation, then let the parent know, I'll be happy to tell Mrs. Mole that you need to talk to her. She'll call you in the morning, or please send an email. She'll get back to you right away. Okay. I know you had some things you wanted to touch base on that with.
That is the biggest part, is that SOS does not want you to have contact with the parents. That is our policy. So there is no communication via text message, email, or anything of the sort. It has to go through the immediate teacher. If the teacher asks you to do it, you're still not allowed to do it. Okay, that is the teacher's responsibility.
And the teacher is aware of that too. The teacher should be making that first-hand contact. The teacher really should be using, making the phone call. I know there are many parents that the only way you can get them is through text or email, but that really is the exception and not the rule, because we really like to have that verbal communication. But please rely on your immediate supervisor, your teacher, to have that communication with the parents or with any other people that may be grabbing you. And besides, the relationship you have with principals and things like that. It's just the confidentiality gets so tricky sometimes. So we want to protect you in all areas that we possibly can. And again, you're working for SOS, so their rules are even a little tighter when it comes to making sure that you're growing professionally, you're working well with the students and the teachers, and that you're moving forward.
This goes along with documentation. If the teacher's asking you to document it, make sure that you understand what they're asking you to document. Any kind of note-taking on your behalf can be utilized if the district would be put into a litigation or any kind of legal scenario with the parent. Everything that you write can be used. You are not, unless the teacher is specifically asking you to do it, writing anything about the kids, okay? And the cell phone usage is prohibited. You may have it on you. However, in the past, everyone knows this, we've had problems with texting each other, looking for support, or video recording a child's behavior, or taking pictures. This school year, we cannot have that. Yes, I see your face. It truly did happen in this district last year, and that is why we're standing firm on the cell phones are absolutely not to be out when you're interacting with the student.
And another scenario is we fight really hard because we need you and our students need you. And if you're sitting in the back of the room, and I'm not pointing fingers, but it has happened already this year, and you're texting or just looking at Facebook on your phone and there are some students there, it makes it look like we don't need you. And I can tell you, we need every single one of you plus more. And I don't want to need to fight and say, but we do need them, because you never know who's walking in and out of there. And when back to the communication, you never know who is associated or related or best friends with someone that you might be talking to, and that's happened so many times too. And these are conversations I've had. I've been working with paraprofessionals and one-to-one supports for 18 years. It's a long time. And these are conversations I've had every single year, because some of the things we're saying, you're like, oh my gosh, that would never happen. It has happened. So we learn from things that have happened, and we try to want to kind of protect you at the same time. Any questions? Please look through the book. If you have any questions and you can't get Mrs. Taylor, you can talk to your teacher, or you can track me down. I'd be happy to walk through it, because it's really hard to hit every single piece when you need a chance to sort of look at it. But again, it's just meant to have guidelines. What are you? What shouldn't you be doing? And how important you are in different scenarios.
And you guys are very important. We can't do this without your support. However, I hate to focus on it, but it's common sense kind of things. When my daughter was in school, I wouldn't have wanted. I mean, my daughter, she had her issues, but I wouldn't have wanted somebody reporting her behavior. Okay, and so cell phones and the communication and.
Does anyone write in the communication book?
The teacher asked me to, and I told her, no. I said, you have to do it. I
Okay.
said, I can tell you something if I want, I can suggest something, but you've gotta write it.
What do you
Yeah.
write in your communication book?
Which each class, what this student had done, my student's nonverbal, so it's just the activities that they did in each class. And, there's a section there, for toileting, and there's also, for each class, what the mood was for the student, and.
You're working at the high school, right? Okay. Let me talk to Sam
That's great.
and go through that, because I want to streamline. I understand why you need to do what you're doing, because that's a whole different scenario with some of your trainings and things. But let me talk to Sam to make sure she's looking at that to make it very concrete. And it's not like more sensory, like I feel like this or it looks like that, that it's like very concrete. Okay, because I think based on the trainings that you and her had to go to for certain things, it looks a little different. So I will take a look at that and make sure we're in that area. some scenarios look a little different, so if you have questions or you want us to look at it, we absolutely will.
I've already written, just like to remind the parent to please sign a paper.
I'm sorry, can you read?
I said, when I write, it's usually like, please sign a paper that needs to be returned or something. That's what I usually write. Please
Okay, and is that,
sign-
the teacher looks at it before you hand it out?
Yes,
Okay.
she sees, it's in her assignment book.
Okay, who do you work with?
I'm not reaching out, but it's the
Okay.
I mean, the actual classroom teacher sees it.
I see, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep everyone together. Okay, and that's very specific, but I will check it to make sure we're the, because I'm trying to go off what SOS is,
Okay, so you want the teacher to write that? Is that what you're saying?
I'm gonna look and see what it looks like.
A please sign here is not what SOS is saying you cannot do. That's simple, you can do that, but you can't write to the parent, so-and-so's
He had a good day, he had a bad day.
You can't say he's had a great day. We're drawing the line on, a please sign here is harmless. He had a great day, we don't want you having that communication, okay? Barb and I went over this book at length numerous times, just to make sure we were all on the same page, and SOS is going to stand firm on, there is no contact with the parents.
And there might be a scenario and we talked about this, Sandy, when someone might do an FBA and there's a tally sheet that they need to check a box. That's different. That's not communicating with the parent. That might be you're checking, like you may be doing, what did they do in this classroom? How many times did they fall on the floor? So you might be checking a box.
Or
That's
how many
not
times
what
did
we're
the
talking
teacher
about.
have to redirect and they want you to tally that? Those are different things than, and I know that most of you in this room, when I'm going to say this, know what I'm talking about, the CYA books that were going on. We can't have that, okay? So it happened last year, it's not happening this year. There's no documentation of the students, okay? So, be very careful what you're doing. Tally marks, please sign me, those are little things that aren't gonna get anybody into a situation that we don't wanna be in. Anything else outside of that needs to come through the teacher. Okay?
And again, if you have any questions, please, track one of us down and I'll be available.
Like if I have tracking sheets, they go to
The teacher. Yeah, they're not tracking sheets that go home. They're tracking sheets that the teacher's doing a positive behavior support plan. So she's doing a functional behavior assessment, yeah. So you're checking, you're not even really writing too many comments on there. You should be mostly either putting a tally mark or checking the box, yes, he did this, or no, he didn't do that.
homework, if it was done,
Yeah.
that kind of.
Yeah, so that's more of a data collection that you're giving to the teacher. Now, if you're sending that home to the parent, no.
No, this is just for him.
Yeah, and that's when they're trying to track data for the IEP or just to do some of those other things. So there are things that the teacher may need you to do, but it's not that two-way communication back and forth.
Okay.
That's the teacher that will take that information, put it in a report, and then share it with the parents. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you.
Enjoy the sunshine that we're going to get for a day. I think you are.
That I'm going to get going. I told you my experience is in instruction, so of course I'm going to give you your learning target for today's training, what I hope that you walk away at the end of the training learning and understanding. So here they are. So by the end of this training, I can explain the difference between common disciplinary approaches based on rewards and punishment and positive discipline. Okay. We're going to learn about positive discipline. Common disciplinary approaches, we're talking about those ones that are punitive, where there's a direct penalty for something that a child did. You'll be able to discuss your own leadership style and how it affects others, which I think is so interesting when I did it myself. You will be able to share examples of telling versus asking. You will be able to explain 3 ways that you can promote positive discipline tomorrow. And you will be able to explain something called the mistaken goals chart, which is a fabulous resource that we're going to learn about, that when you see a student exhibit a behavior, it's a wonderful chart that will help you to determine where the behavior is coming from, ideas about why maybe it's happening, checking your own response to that behavior, and suggestions on how to help that student. What's the real root of that behavior? It's great.
But I want you to be able to explain it so that it's a tool you can walk away using. Any questions on those goals for today? Okay. So, this is a great visual to kind of get your mind wrapped around positive discipline. I want you to think of a train. And public schools tend to be on this right side of the track. Academics, PSSAs, growth scores, performance, report cards. And the fact of the matter is, a train cannot run unless there's two tracks, and a school cannot operate without the two tracks. This side of the track is significance and belonging, and that's the part that we're going to talk about today. Students need to feel like they belong in order to perform academically. They need to feel connected. They need to feel confident, capable. They need to be able to feel comfortable to make mistakes, and that they're not going to be ridiculed, they're not going to be punished, they're not going to be made to feel less. That they're going to have those opportunities, a safe environment where they can learn from those mistakes. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How can we do more here, right, to get more here? And mostly, not just to get more here, but to create well-rounded individuals that graduate from schools with social skills and empathy, that they can go out into the world with life skills to tackle problems, to collaborate in groups. These are the skills that our students are lacking. Think of the technology age that we are in right now. We need to specifically teach these skills to students, and they can be done tucked in as behavior occurs. If we can use those behaviors as teaching opportunities to teach these life skills, that's what today is about. That is what our hope is, that we can shift to that. So I just want you to consider these questions, because you might be thinking, okay, I'm just sitting in another training. And I hope that you leave here today not feeling like this is another training, but you're kind of excited, you're kind of pumped to go back and say, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try something new, and see if my students respond differently. See if behavior is improved. So I want you to answer these questions in your head. Do you want your students to be good decision makers? Do you want them to learn resilience, responsibility, cooperation, listening skills, self-control? Do you want them to be comfortable with accountability? Do you want to know that they can hurt others with hurtful behavior? Make amends for the mistakes that hurt others? Do you want them to know the qualities and strengths for good character? And do you want a classroom where academic excellence can happen because students are encouraged to love learning? Doesn't this sound beautiful? It's like a perfect classroom, right? So I'm going to show you a short video, and it's kind of the overall principles of positive discipline. At the end of the video, I want you to be prepared. I think I switched this. With one question and one interesting idea from the video. One question you still have, and one interesting idea from the video. It's like 5 minutes. But that's what you're listening for.
Hi, this is Jane Nelson, and welcome to Positive Discipline, where you're going to learn hundreds of non-punitive parenting tools. Many parents think that when we say don't use punishment, that means being permissive. And permissiveness is not healthy for children any more than punishment is. In fact, wouldn't you be willing to give up punishment and permissiveness if you knew there were many other methods and tools you could use that would help your children learn self-discipline, responsibility, cooperation, and problem-solving skills? Let me share with you the 5 criteria for positive discipline. Number 1 is that it's both kind and firm at the same time. When you're kind, that's very respectful to children, and when you're firm, that's respectful to the needs of the situation. If you're being too kind without being firm, you're probably being too permissive. And if you're being firm without being kind, you're probably being too controlling and disrespectful. Criteria number 2 is to help children feel a sense of belonging and significance. Belonging and significance is the primary goal of all people, and especially children. And when children don't feel that sense of belonging and significance, they usually try to find it in mistaken ways. And those mistaken ways are usually seeking undue attention, misguided power, revenge, or just giving up. Criteria number 3 is that positive discipline, non-punitive parenting tools work long-term, not just short-term. And this is where I get to observe that I'm not saying that punishment doesn't work. If all you're interested in is stopping the behavior right now, punishment will do that. But we need to be aware of what children are thinking, feeling, and deciding that affects them long-term. Criteria number 4 is that positive discipline tools help children learn valuable social and life skills for good character, such as problem-solving skills and thinking skills and listening skills, communication skills, self-soothing skills, and many other tools that will serve them throughout their life. And the last criteria, number 5, is that positive discipline tools help children develop a sense of their own capability and helps them learn how to use their personal power in useful ways so that they can be contributing members of society.
After listening to Jane Nelson speak about the 5 criteria of positive discipline, turn and tell your partner what question do you have and what did you find interesting. The video will continue in 2 minutes. There are 5 criteria for positive discipline, 3 beliefs, and 4 skills that help children succeed in school and in life.
So positive discipline have 7 beliefs and skills that they believe that are part of their philosophy. And the first belief that a student has to have in order to succeed is that they're capable. And I look back at that story that I told you from New York, where I had students who people didn't really think they were capable of sitting and reading and writing and behaving, right? But once you believe that they can, it's a whole different story. Another example I have, so being capable means that students have a safe environment to explore consequences. My 3-year-old the other day hit me for the first time, and she was frustrated. I wasn't laying her baby blanket down like smooth enough. And she was so frustrated, and she hit me, and I stopped. And I told her she needed to take a break and some deep breaths. But then we talked about it, and I talked about how when she hit me, how that made me feel. And then we discussed 3 other ways that she could have handled that frustration. She could have taken a deep breath. She could have used her words and said, "Mommy, I'm frustrated." And she could have walked away. And so by the end of that little conversation with her, she now had 3 other strategies to try the next time she got frustrated. And I guarantee the next time she gets frustrated, I'll pause her before I can kind of see it heighten and remind her of those 3 strategies. So her hitting me became a learning opportunity. She didn't have to go to her room. She's never hit me. She's never known what that consequence or that reaction was going to be from me, right? But now she does. My hope is that it doesn't happen in the future, but it became a learning opportunity. I contribute in meaningful ways, and I am genuinely needed. This example came from one of my 8th graders when I was in the middle school, and this 8th grader decided that the way that we were running the school wasn't good, and that he thought that we should work on a point system where every team got a point for being well behaved, bringing their book, raising their hands, all these things, criteria that he had that he wanted to implement. And so I met with him one-on-one. The guidance counselor directed him to me. I was running a program that made sense for him to come meet with me. And we sat down and we brainstormed his ideas, and I brought them back to my committee that was on the school improvement plan, and we implemented some of his ideas. Not all of them, but some of them. And he really felt like he was a part of contributing to that school, that one individual, just because of that one conversation. So that's an example of how a student can feel important and how they can count. I use my personal power to make choices that positively influence what happens to me and my community. Students need to understand that they can't always control what happens around them, but they can control how they respond. And in our conversations with them, every time they feel frustrated or they have a negative emotion or there's a misbehavior, we need to help them use those opportunities to teach them how they can control their own behavior and how the external circumstances may not always change. But in our conversations, we need to be teaching them these beliefs. And so there's 4 skills that we also want our students to have. We want them to have discipline and self-control. How many kids, I had kids all the time barging into your classroom, right? Whatever was going on in their world was so important in that moment. Even though I had already started class and they were late and I was teaching, they were barging into the class as if nobody else mattered. And so that becomes a teaching opportunity. They don't get, and when I say they don't get punished, what I'm talking about is those opportunities for learning. If you have repeated lateness or you have, there's obviously rules and systems in place that you have to start to just lay a fine line down. But when we're talking about teaching, I took that student in the hallway and we had a conversation. Positive discipline is about lots of talking and conversations and listening. So instead of going into that hallway and saying, "You were late, you were rude, now I have to catch you up," I just said, "How was your morning?" And I just gave him an opportunity to kind of dump and unload. And in that, I learned what was causing him stress and anxiety. And I listened and I validated his feelings and I said, "Can we try this again?" After we had talked about different ways that he could enter the room. Now, there's a lot of effort on my part. I had to make sure the class, was doing something else, but as paraprofessionals, it's a perfect opportunity for you to walk a student in the hallway, listen, ask questions, find out what's going on. Give them specific ways that they can re-enter that classroom and try again, and then let them do it. Watch them do it. this is what we have to teach them. I can work respectfully with others. There's a 4-step problem-solving strategy that we'll go over perhaps in the next training session. I don't think we have time to do it today, but essentially what it says is, don't tell the kids how to solve a problem. Allow them to solve problems. Set them up in talking and conversations, and let them figure out how to solve it. They feel much more empowered that way. But they also learn how to work with others when they're the ones that are coming up with the ways that might work. There's an example of three girls that were working together, and the teacher assumed that they couldn't work together because 3 is an odd number and that wasn't going to work. Where when the teacher came over and actually sat down and talked to them, they were very open to ways that they wanted to work together, and it was that they didn't know how to figure out playing a 2-person game with 3 people. So once the teacher gave them strategies or suggestions, they were able to come up with ideas that would make it work, and they decided they were going to have one person sit out and the 2 were going to play. Great. I understand how my behavior affects others. This example is, we want kids to start to be able to say, it's not that I got an F or a D or whatnot, but it's I didn't study, so I earned an F, right? So my behavior of not studying, the effect was this grade. And we need to help students to understand that they are responsible for their behavior. And I can develop wisdom and judgment skills on daily practice. This skill requires students to evaluate problems, and that's really the ultimate of what we want students to do. We want them to be able to look at a problem and be able to problem solve and think about how it could go in their head, and be able to select the road they want to take, the problem solving approach that they want to take. So these are huge skills. They have to be taught. They might not be taught at home. We can't expect students to come to school with these skills. Parenting styles are all over the map. When they walk into that classroom, they have to be taught these skills. And paraprofessionals are so vital in teaching these skills, because teachers are, a lot of the time, worried about the content in the curriculum. And it's these soft skills that they need to be able to learn the content in the curriculum that paraprofessionals can support quite beautifully, actually. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to think about characteristics and life skills you hope your students will develop. It's a big question. scholarships, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see academics on any of your lists. Does anybody have an academic?
I said complete assignments on time.
Okay, all right. But
you guys, once they get in the workforce, they're going to have to know to do that.
So time management.
Right.
All direction.
Yep. So I think it's interesting that these life skills don't really include academics.
No.
They really don't. How many of you think that these life skills are as important as academics?
More important.
More important. More important. So why then are they taking a back seat? Right?
Parents.
Say more.
I think a lot of the times that some of these kids don't get the attention at home from their parents, and I think they learn a lot more from school because they're there longer, and then they have more, they're exposed to us way longer than they are their own parents at home, because by the time they do homework or play games and watch TV and they go to bed, we have more influence.
Yeah, Harry.
I think that like the state and government as a whole with standardized testing pushes any kind of life skills or ability for standardized testing and academics to the side. They don't care if your kid has anxiety, they want them to have good scores on their standardized tests. So standardized testing is, in my opinion, evil and unnecessary, especially for the kids that we work with. Good
point. You're here. Hold that. Keep all of that. And I want you to, I think the PowerPoint might be on the next slide. I want you to take a minute and I want you to think about the behavior challenges you face. I know this is a loaded question. I know this is huge and there's not enough time in the day to think about, to jot all this down. But I truly want you to think about the behavior challenges that you face each and every day. And I want you to jot that list. Go ahead, I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to jot that list, and then we're going to do the same thing and do a turn and talk.
I still do, well, no.
Trauma teacher.
Yeah.
Couple people want to share out behavior challenges, one or two. Go ahead.
I play with objects, whether it's the lead in their pencils or their water bottles or stuff in their desks.
So what's the behavior? Are they shouting out? Are they avoiding work? Are they shutting down? Running away? Go ahead.
I have blurting out, because I work with 8th graders, blurting out without being recognized by the teacher.
Right, they just have no regard.
I have a student this year that is constantly falling asleep, and I don't mean just like nodding off a little bit. I mean, you know,
sound asleep.
Sound asleep.
Does the teacher just sort of ignore it, or?
Well, we try to wake him up, but
What grade?
7. You know, sometimes tapping on the desk and you know, is enough, but most times he's going like this and he's trying to wake up and he can't open up his eyes.
So keep that in your head as we move forward, that example. And I want each of you to think of an example that you've written on that list. What if we could use these behavior challenges to teach life skills? That's what positive discipline is using these challenges to teach these life skills. And that's what we want to do. Because in that, we're improving behavior. So when you think about a behavior problem, is your first reaction to tell the student to do something or ask the student to do something?
I'll ask the first time.
And what would that ask? Could you give an example?
Will you please sit still, or will you please not blurt out?
Okay.
It's not polite to do that.
Okay. Other examples? What, ask or tell?
I'll ask why they don't want to do their work or why they got frustrated.
I say maybe you get your book out and turn to page.
With this particular student, I mean, I've tried tapping on the desk and saying, you know, can you listen to what the teacher said? Or I've tried, can you get a drink of water? And I've also asked, what can I do to help you stay awake?
Yeah.
I don't ask. Because if you ask, then they say, well, you asked. No, I don't want to. So I just say, this is what needs to happen next.
I tell.
Yeah.
Students are
I think it really depends on the student you're working with.
That's what I
Some
was just
students
thinking, yeah.
accept it as a direct, you know,
Yeah.
and some of them don't do well. You know, sometimes you should ask, sometimes, you know, they'll come back, well, you asked me. You
Some
know.
need more structure than others.
Right,
That's the word that I look at when I say that. There's some that you've got to just be okay, bump, 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 and others, like, an example of the other way.
Guys, can we listen here?
Especially technology, these computers. You see what they do to you right here.
Can you tell me your first name again?
Sarah.
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 Guys,
Yeah.
Sarah is adding to the conversation.
Yeah.
If you guys can just listen. Go ahead.
We've been having a big issue like you have with students trying to log on to something that we know is acceptable in school. But they can log, like, we try to get them onto like Cool Math for Kids. That's a big one right now. I should be able to log right into that.
Yeah.
But they can bring up videos of whatever they like, and lately it's tanks and things and shooting and, you know. So I'll say, instead of him getting mad, I'll say, what should we do right now while Mrs. Brown tries to get through to this? And I usually get, oh right, I should just wait. So I ask, you know, what should we do right now? because I get frustrated too at the computer, and I want to smash it against the wall, but I can't show him that, you know. So I said, what should we do? And sometimes I'll put my hands on my lap before I go back up to the screen, just to what do you call it? Mirror, like role model, you know, yeah. So I try and show them my actions of not getting angry, and then say, what should we do to let them think, instead of saying, okay, you need to sit and be quiet. But like I said, with other kids, some of them we have to say, okay, you need to sit and be quiet. So it is very specific to whatever student you have at that time.
We're going to take those behavior challenges and life skills, and we're going to transition into a part of positive discipline that is its foundation, and that is the idea of being kind and firm. When we think about this, I want you to think of polarities, opposites. A good example of this is breathing. When you breathe in and then you breathe out. But what happens if you were to choose to do either or? It wouldn't be very healthy. This is one of those cases where the opposites are very important to work together. To demonstrate this idea of how important it is to be kind and firm, we're going to do this activity. You have a handout that has 4 squares on it. On the handout, you have one section where I want you to write negative results of a focus only on firm. And then I want you to do a negative result of a focus only on kind, and then a positive result of a focus only on firm, and a positive result of a focus only on kind. So if you are with somebody right now, one other person, go ahead and work together. If you're by yourself right now watching this video, you can work alone, but definitely work with someone if you have someone there with you. Take a minute to review what you wrote in each of your 4 squares. Your positive results of being only kind, your negative results from being only kind, your positive results from being only firm, and your negative results from being only firm. And ask yourself, which do you have your greatest tendency? To be a little too kind or a little too firm? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Now take a couple minutes to think about, what did you learn from doing this activity? Take about 5 minutes to turn and talk to the person next to you. If you don't have anybody next to you, just get a piece of paper and jot long. What did you learn from doing this activity? And then we'll come back and we'll share together. Now that you've had a minute to turn and talk and reflect on what you learned from doing the activity, I'm going to mention some things that maybe didn't come up in your conversation. So perhaps you're too kind. Think about what happens when you try and be firm. Is it natural? Does it sound mean? Are you uncomfortable doing that? Or perhaps it's the opposite. Perhaps you're very firm, and being kind makes you nervous. Maybe it's not something natural, and you feel that you might be perceived as being weak or a pushover. So, being aware of where we are, too kind or too firm, allows us to notice how we are interacting with the students, and perhaps be more aware of trying to be more in the middle, where we are firm and kind. It used to be that schools were only firm, and now we know that students are more vulnerable. They demand more equality and respect, and that we have to be kind and firm for our students to really thrive and succeed. So it's our job to be more aware of where we are on the pendulum and try and come as close to the middle as we can. I'd like to offer you a way to be kind and firm, and that's through an activity called asking versus telling. In this activity, we will explore the way we ask or tell students to do something and the impact it has on the receiver, in this case, the student. So if you can reference your asking versus telling directions to participate in this activity, you may do that by yourself or with a partner. The video will continue in 8 minutes.
I do. Now that I got up, I gotta pee.
That was fine too, they could do it. The five of us saved everybody.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
Okay, as you're settling in your seats, I want you to look back at that list of life skills that you created. Respect, courtesy, cooperation, collaboration. What else?
Kindness.
Shout them out. What else did you have? Kindness. What else? Independence.
Assertiveness.
Assertiveness. Courtesy. Problem solving.
Teamwork.
Teamwork. You're so positive. And okay, so that's a beautiful list. I want you to think about the telling statements, which were first, and the asking statements, which were second. Okay? Which statements do you think help students to learn life skills? Telling or asking? Asking. 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 Depending how you ask it. Say more about that, because that's huge.
A lot goes into the tone of the voice, and if you're talking to them like a child or like an actual person. I mean, it varies between what the instance is and age, but, you have to kind of adapt for that and make sure each person in the situation understands.
I agree. Yes.
I like to give them a reason while we're doing it.
Say more.
I'll say, come on buddy, let's get the area cleaned up before we go for lunch.
Is that telling or asking?
We do it together, so I guess asking.
It's telling. It's telling. You're telling him to clean up, because we have to, and
We
why?
have to get the area cleaned up before we could go to lunch. We
Can
do
we
it together.
Can we take that example and turn it into an asking? That is telling. How can we turn that into asking?
I usually model and I say, like, maybe, okay, what do we need to do before lunch?
What do we need to do to get this area ready so we can go to lunch?
Too many words for my kids.
Yes.
Also, say, what do we need to do before lunch?
Well, okay, buddy, we have to get this room cleaned up so we can go to lunch
Yes.
is just as many words.
I'm trying to think of what would actually work. He needs to know why he has to do something. It's lunchtime, let's clean up the area.
It's lunchtime, can we please clean up the area?
It's
so we can go?
lunchtime, could we please clean up the area?
That's a yes or no answer.
But he's usually cooperative when it's put to him that way. If I would say, clean this up now so we could go.
Okay.
that's
Is he the only student you work with?
Yes, I'm one-on-one.
Okay. You
Well,
know
no,
you're
he's
one-on-one.
not the only one. I'm with other kids when he's on lunch. but
Okay, so
He's my primary student.
you know your primary student best. You know what his triggers are. You know how to work with him. If he is responding positively to your commands or telling statements, then that's fine. Think about your other students, because remember, we're talking about behavior challenges right now.
The other students I'm with, one is fine. She's just wonderful. The other one is a constant battle.
Think about her.
Him. I can't do that. I don't know how. I don't know how to do that. You'll have to help me. Can you tell me how to do it? When you know, he can do all the problems.
Okay, so for that child, I don't know that child, but it sounds like that child, maybe there's too many steps, or maybe he's overwhelmed. Again, I don't know that student.
He needs to be told he has to do something.
And what happens when you give him a telling statement?
He will do it. It's like, you know how to do that. Now let me see how good you could finish up this page.
So is he a behavior problem?
He can be.
So when he's a behavior problem, what is the behavior problem?
Making noises out of turn.
Okay, so think about that.
Talking out of turn.
Think about that, because that's your behavior problem. use that example. Let's come up with a question. Tell me your name again.
Martha.
Let's come up with a question that Martha can ask this student instead of a telling statement.
For instance, when he's on the beanbags reading a book, he'll constantly make chirping noises and just.
So student A, what would it look like to read quietly on the beanbag? What do you have to do on the beanbag in order to read your book? Any other questions you can think to ask this student to put the owner on him or her? Any other questions?
How do you think the other students feel with the noise if everyone else is quiet?
Yeah. So you could even do if you have other kids in the class that are reading, I want you to look at this child and this child. What is it that they're doing that you can do too, or that you could be doing but not?
You can try that. I want attention. That's all. It doesn't matter if it's negative or whatever. He wants attention.
We are going to look at a
It's
behavior.
huge for a lot of my students. They're very needy and they don't care what they do as
That's
long as
what
they
this
say,
is.
look at me.
We're going to look at a chart,
This is very needy.
and the chart is
Very needy.
going to help us get underneath that behavior and look at the iceberg and see what's exploding underneath that behavior to help with that. So that activity was meant for us to experience the difference between telling and asking. As paraprofessionals and teachers, we need to do more asking. We need to do more listening. We need to stop talking.
When you ask, that allows them to problem solve on their
Correct.
own,
Correct.
which is giving them life skills
Correct.
right there.
Correct. Think about some other life skills. Respect. How could asking help teach respect? I'm just going to get my charger because I think think about that. Anybody? How could asking a question help? Let's think about the example here with the beanbag. How does that help teach respect? Anyone? If the child's being noisy on the beanbag and other kids are reading and you ask him, what does it look like to be reading quietly? Or what should you do? What does it look like to be reading right now? What does that look like? Or what should you do? Or, yeah, I think that's what I would say. What do you have to do right now in order to be reading quietly? Yeah.
I think sometimes just asking the question sometimes may be able to stop the behavior just because you make them stop and think about it.
Yeah. And they're not being told to do something. That's exactly it. The less directives we give and the more asking we start doing, the more we're going to learn about our students and why they're acting the way that they're acting. And the better the students are going to respond to us. So, remember how I told you today you were going to leave here with something you can try tomorrow? That's one thing. I want you to start being more reflective in how you're talking to students. And I want you to be more aware of your telling statements. And I want you to try and do more asking statements. It's a shift, but it's something that we can be aware of to improve the connection we have with our students, to improve their behavior, and really to learn more about it. Yeah.
You said like try to avoid yes, no questions. Like I'm up at the high school where like cell phones are a constant.
Yeah.
How can you avoid like yes, no questions there? Like
A high school kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
I have kids in a history class, and a lot of times they have their phones out instead of doing the assignment, and they'll say, oh, I'll just do it at home. That's why I'm playing on my phone right now, I'll just do it at home. So I just say to them, like, okay, when you're in your bedroom tonight, instead of playing on this game, you'd rather be doing your homework.
Well, I try
Because
that too.
they definitely don't, I mean, you have to, I mean, a lot of times it doesn't do any difference, but at least it points out that their free time in school is much better used on schoolwork than doing it at home in their free time, because you know
Like
they're
there
not
are
gonna do it.
also like instances like with classes like where they're like on their phone and you can't point to other kids and say, well, they're not on their phone.
How about, what's the best way to,
Oh, yeah. I usually point out
how
to
can you be a
kids
good
that
listener?
You don't wanna get into a fight with a kid over.
No, that's why, no. So I would say in that situation, and I know the high school kids are tough, especially with the phones. First of all, what's the rule? Is the rule a no cell phone policy? Shouldn't be out.
Oh, no, they're allowed.
So this is a perfect example of how you can teach a life skill. The teacher's teaching and the phone is out, right? Is the teacher okay with that? But sometimes the teachers are using it.
Some are fine. Some are fine with it, but then when they're not doing their work, then you can tell it's getting annoying. But they have earbuds in, they're not listening to what.
Yeah, that's so hard because there's no consistency there for the kid.
There was a little bit.
So it's a life skill. You're going to get different bosses, you're going to get different teachers, right? You have to respond to the environment that you're in. And I would teach that child, if that child is supposed to put that phone away and that's what the teacher wants, or in the hallway or whatever, I think I would ask that student a question that helps them to understand how disrespectful it is when they're on the phone and the teacher is teaching.
They don't care. I think it sounds dumb like that, but they don't care.
And I would say they don't care because they don't know, they don't have that belief or the skills necessary yet. They don't care. Of course they don't care. Nobody has taught them that how rude it is or how it makes that person in the front feel when they're sitting on their phone. I have to tell you right now, each one of you, and I said this last, I think it was at the back to school, as a group, you all are a dream to present to. Because you're respectful, you're kind. Right now, every single one of you is making eye contact with me. And these are the skills that we have to teach our students. In that case, I would say that kid doesn't care because they don't have empathy. They don't have those life skills yet. So you have to keep teaching them. And instead of getting, you have to look at the situation for me and say, how can I teach this child something they're not going to get it the first time, or how can I help them to understand why that's rude, why that's disrespectful, and why, if the teacher really is bothered by it, that teacher's going to give them a consequence. That's going to be the old,
Old school.
a punishment, right?
Yeah.
But we're trying to use this example and to help make it better for the future. Help them in the future. We don't want them to take their phone out at inappropriate times. So you want them to be more aware. I'm sort of talking through this now, but maybe one of the questions is, what are the expectations of you as a student right now as your teacher is teaching? What do you think of that question?
What are the expectations of us? Is that what you're
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking.
Like if we asked the
we're
student
troubleshooting
that.
the student who uses their cell phone, and I'm sure that's a common high school problem.
But isn't this driven by the teacher? The teacher sets.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and if we have inconsistency in
Yeah.
the classroom, it makes it increasingly
Yes.
difficult for us
Yes, it
when there
does.
is that inconsistency. It's like this program. It works when it works in conjunction with the teachers having the same processes. And if they don't, we're fighting an uphill battle.
There's teachers that don't have control of their classrooms. So we're kind of thrown into the war zone because he or she is the person that we're supposed to be the go-to for, and a lot of times I feel like we're used as the disciplinarians in the class. In the high school anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody
No,
else feels
sometimes it
anywhere else.
depends on the teacher, but sometimes it
And
is that.
sometimes you have a
Yeah,
rapport
they
with
look
the
at
kid.
you like, why isn't your kid being quiet? It's like,
Right,
because the
some-
other 20 are yelling and bouncing
Right,
around.
right.
That's
Sometimes
why
you-
mine's not being quiet right now.
I feel more comfortable if I've had the kid before, because a lot of times they
Right.
know me and they're
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'll put it down just to make her happy for 5 minutes. or
Well,
whatever.
sure, yeah.
But then
But
other
they've
ones
done
that
it,
I
but
don't.
the-
It's intimidating.
Yeah, yeah.
It's intimidating.
Yeah.
But going back to the teacher having control of the
Right.
room, if the teacher doesn't show respect to the parents, we might as well not even be there.
chose this philosophy because I felt it was the closest and the best match to paraprofessionals, even if the teacher didn't have this philosophy. Crouching down next to a student and very softly asking a question to that student to try and encourage that student to make a good choice and to, put the phone away or just to reduce that behavior challenge is all we can ask of you. You're not going to work miracles. But I do believe that if you have rapport with your students and you have connections, which I know you do, if you crouch down and the tone of your voice, somebody over here talked about the tone of your voice and the way that you ask a question, they might feel respected by you. They might feel that you care. And they might feel that you're not attacking them necessarily, but you're helping them. You're helping them, you're guiding them to make a choice right now. And you might start to see some response. It's all how you do it. So I believe that if you leave here today and you start shifting from a telling statement to an asking statement, using the tone and the phrasing that's positive, that you will start to reduce some behavior challenges and start to make some connections with students that maybe you didn't have before. Do we think that perhaps when we leave here, tomorrow or the next day, we can keep this in the forefront of our head and be aware of it and try and shift? Because we're going to come back together, I think in March, and we're going to revisit this. And we're going to talk about examples. How did it go? What did you notice? Those kinds of things. Okay. If anybody needs to get up and use the bathroom, anybody need a break? Why don't we do a 5-minute break? I'm going to set the timer. 5 minutes is over. I'm going to start again. So 5 minutes. Go ahead and use the bathroom and we'll come back. gears and we're going to do a little reflection on us, leadership styles. This will help us to evaluate how we are working with students and other people. So, okay. So there's three different typical leadership styles. The first one is called the boss. And this person says, it's my way or the highway, I'll tell you how to behave and what to do, and you'd better do what I say or you're in trouble. That's somehow how that goes. There's also a leadership style called the rug. And the rug believes, I'm here to make you happy and comfortable. You tell me what you need and want, and I'll make it happen. Then there's the ghost. The ghost is an absent leader who disappears emotionally, if not physically, hopes for the best, and is off doing something else. So just let those three things resonate in your head, right? And see if you can, maybe you can identify with one of those three. All of these leaders probably use punishment and reward as their discipline approach. Probably. That's sort of a general statement, but for the most part, yeah. These people believe that in order to do better, in order for a child to do better, we first must make them feel worse. But the problem is that this approach often leads to resentment, feelings of revenge, rebellion. It doesn't usually end positively. So, I'm going to put a couple phrases up. And I want you to think about which one makes you most uncomfortable. Most uncomfortable. Does the thought of being in pain or under stress just make you feel like you'd rather not deal with pain or stress? What about rejection or hassle? Is that the one where you're like, I will avoid everything in order not to feel rejection? Or hassle, to be put out, to be inconvenienced? Meaningless and unimportance. If you have to sit somewhere and you're just, hopefully you're not feeling like that right now, and you're just like, this doesn't even relate to me. Why am I here? It's a waste of my time, and you're just like flat out mad. Criticism and ridicule. If you feel uncomfortable about criticism and ridicule, and it makes you you just avoid it at all costs, which one of those do you feel most uncomfortable about? Or would you want to avoid the most? If you are pain and stress, you're heading over here to these bookshelves.
I'm okay.
No, I think emotional. Because that would go with stress.
They are.
To be hurt. If you are meaningless and unimportant, you are back here. I'll move the camera. If you are criticism and ridicule, you're in the back. And if you're rejection and hassle, you're up here. This is going to help you determine your leadership style. Head to your spot. Which would you most want to avoid? Pain and stress, rejection and hassles, meaningless and unimportance, or criticism and ridicule? It helps to read these words out loud to yourself, noticing if you have an uncomfortable reaction to hearing one set over another. Once you've decided which makes you most uncomfortable, read about how your personality influences your work in the classroom and answer the questions that follow.
Welcome back. Here's how you can start to shift your leadership style to positive discipline. Positive discipline teachers look for opportunities to help children learn from their experiences. Allowing natural consequences is actually a discipline choice. Natural consequences occur without any adult intervention. If a child forgets her raincoat and it rains, she will get wet. If a child cuts in line, another classmate will probably say, "No cuts." If a child forgets his or her lunch, 15 classmates will probably offer to share what they have, especially the parts their parents packed that they don't like. Many issues in a classroom are easily and quickly solved without any adult interference. If you are feeling uncomfortable sitting back, at least count to 10 in your head and see what happens before you jump in thinking you have to micromanage the situation. Instead of punishment, here are some alternatives to logical consequences that will help us shift our thinking towards positive discipline. Focus on the future instead of the past. One clue that we are more interested in punishment is when the focus is on the past rather than the future. The focus is on making kids pay for what they have done, instead of looking for solutions that would help them learn for the future. Another alternative is to focus on solutions instead of consequences. Instead of looking for logical consequences, look for solutions. It is a mistake to think there must be a logical consequence or punishment for every behavior and to solve every problem. Additionally, we can get kids involved in solutions. Kids are our greatest untapped resource. They have a wealth of wisdom and talent for solving problems when we invite them to do so. The benefits are numerous. They have the opportunity to use and strengthen their skills, and they are more likely to keep agreements in which they have ownership. They develop self-confidence and healthy self-esteem when they are listened to, taken seriously, and valued for their contribution. They experience belonging and significance. When they feel belonging and significance, they feel less need to misbehave and are more willing to learn from their mistakes and work on solutions to problems. We can also help children explore the consequences of their choices instead of imposing consequences through curiosity questions. Curiosity questions help a student explore the consequences of his or her choices in a way that leads to solutions. What happened? What do you think caused it to happen? How do you feel about it? How do you think others feel? And what have you learned from this? How can you use what you have learned in the future? What ideas do you have to help solve the problem now? This is very different from teachers telling children what happened, what caused it to happen, how they should feel about it, and what they should do about it. Education is derived from the root educare, which means to draw forth. Too often, adults try to stuff in and then wonder why their words go in one ear and out the other. We can also allow consequences instead of imposing consequences or punishment. Avoid rescuing. Show empathy. Kids often solve their own problems if allowed the time. If not, wait for a no conflict time, then focus on solutions. I hope today you learned a little about the difference between being only kind and only firm, and you've thought about how to meet that in the middle. I hope you also learned ways to be kind and firm through asking versus telling statements, and thought a little bit about your own leadership style and how that impacts the students you work with. I have given you some alternatives to logical consequences that foster a positive discipline approach and more of an encouragement model. Please consider these things that we talked about today as you go forth in the classroom tomorrow and every day after. And we will revisit this idea of positive discipline at our trainings again in March. So please, before you end this session today, log into Professional Growth and complete the evaluation. After you complete the evaluation, please then click mark complete for the activity so that you have acknowledged that you attended the activity and completed the evaluation. After you click mark complete, then an administrator, probably me, will go and finalize your course and give you your hours for your 20 annual training hours. Thank you for your attention. I hope that this was meaningful. I tried to make this training as close to the actual training that occurred on September 14th. If you have any feedback for me, I would appreciate it. My name is Nicole Tui, Training Coordinator for SOS, and I hope that you enjoyed today. Have a great evening.